question.
Yeah, question.
So these students aren't necessarily professionals. Why are we presenting some sort of a professional approach?
Yeah, that's a good question. You want to answer it? You're about to raise your hand over here.
Oh, what?
I thought I didn't have a.
We spent 12 hours discussing the same thing driving down here.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so yeah, why would we want these people to be like professionals? Well, you know, here's the thing. The professionals and the experts, they have a lot more experience. That's the main difference between the professional and the recreational users, oftentimes, except, you know, once they become expert recreationists. But when they're beginners, then there's a huge difference, okay? And you know how in the ITCs, I don't know when the last time you took it, but in the curriculum of the ITCs, we teach our providers to become HROs. What's an HRO?
Highly responsible organization.
Highly reliable or high reliability organization. Okay, and in HROs, what we're trying to do is teach providers and instructors to be good risk managers. Okay, and if you look at all the things we teach to the provider to do, which are use checklists, have morning meetings, document things with field books, have debriefs afterwards. These are all the things we teach our providers and instructors to do. How many people are doing that in their courses? You know, if you're not, you really should, you know, because we're trying to increase the reliability of your decision making as well. And you're also modeling exactly what we're trying to teach them. We're not decision making in avalanche terrain. It's a lesson in risk management, personal risk management, not professional risk management, but personal risk management. So why would, my question back to that would be, why would we do anything different? What would be the difference? I haven't come up with anything good. I think you'd do it in a different way. But I don't know that you'd do anything different than what a highly reliable or professional organization might do. So, you know, maybe it's something that people like Alan and his students would think are, you know, I'm too tired at the end of the day. Or this is just too much of a hassle out there. But, you know, that's nothing that we haven't crossed that bridge before in avalanche education, right? So, you know, I think we should be focusing on what best practices are. Any other, did you come up with anything, Oyvind and Richard, when you're 12 hours?
No, we were still discussing whether or not it's appropriate to think that recreational decision makers will make decisions not having the same input necessarily as professional decision makers and the experience to make the same kind of decisions in the same framework as professional decision makers.
Yeah, where do our level 1 students where do they close the gap? How do they close the gap between the expert and the beginner?
Over time?
But even right after they leave the course. Aaron?
Using the forecast.
Thank you, yeah. So the bulletin.
Yeah.
The bulletin is an expert, and imagine you can bring that expert out in the field with you. They're writing your field book. And guess what they're telling you? They're telling you something that is in your own handwriting. Okay, so there's a learning tool there, there's a recognizance tool there, and there's a way of bringing the most relevant aspects. So you don't have to be like, what did the bulletin say again? And like, oh yeah, considerable. You know, you can actually process it in a usable fashion, and that guides not only your terrain choices, but the observations you make out in the field. It helps you better target observations in the field. And so let's say the bulletin doesn't really address what you're looking at. What would that do for the level 1 student? There's a discrepancy between what was in the bulletin and what's in the field. How would a level 1 student respond to that?
Well, the level 1 student is not trained to evaluate its ability, so he always has to fall back on a terrain decision and a travel.
Yeah, exactly. So it's going to make them more uncertain, right? And when there's uncertainty in the equation for them, they need to use terrain. They need to decrease their exposure and their vulnerability using terrain and their travel techniques. Terrain selection being the primary, right? Any questions on that? It's good. It's a good discussion. I mean, these are discussions we've had with a lot of you guys over the last year or two, or even more. And I think it's just a good refresher to get it out in the open. And let's bring it up again. Let's talk about it. Let's refresh ourselves and get ourselves ready to use some new curriculum. Okay. So just a reminder, these are our 2 pages in the field book that we're asking them to use. And this is our checklist. Basically, it's our morning meeting, and we are forecasting using all the resources available what we're going to do, and we're going to make a travel plan. We're going to factor in human factors. We're going to create an emergency response plan, because isn't that part of a risk management plan, personally, right? And we're going to document it and write it down. Because in an emergency, you wouldn't want to be, oh, what did we say we were going to do again? Right? So we actually have it written down, and it's in the field with us. And then once we get out in the field, I mean, this is the genius, I think, of this document, is the field observations are right next to the checklist. So that way, you can target observations exactly to correlate with and compare to what the bulletin had to say about the snowpack. If the snowpack said there's a surface hoar layer buried 60 centimeters down in these types of locations, well, then that can help you remember to go to those types of locations and maybe investigate that. Oh, there it is. If you were getting a forecast in the weather section of the bulletin, and it said, we expect the winds to increase and for slabs to start developing in the afternoon on northeast aspect. You could go out and make a field weather observation and try and verify if that's actually happening. Because as we know, weather forecasters are not always right. Not only that, but guess who else isn't right? Avalanche forecasters, right? And not only are they not always right, it's impossible to even judge if they're right or wrong. Because, I mean, you can say, with weather, you can say, hey, they said it wasn't going to rain, and it's raining. But with avalanche forecasting, it's a regional synoptic forecast. It's a discussion of an enormous area, and now they're trying to extrapolate that into something localized. Okay, so it's really important that they learn to target their observations. So if you think about that, and and this area here is used to document things like avalanche observations and snowpack observations, any red flags you see, notes about terrain use, other instability signs, and obviously the upper part is for making actual field weather observations, so they can learn to see how weather changes. Because basically that's going to be a big lesson of this course, right? Is the spatial variability of the snowpack, how snow varies over the terrain, and why does snow vary over the terrain? Anyway.
Did they come here to find that out, guys?
Because of weather.
Okay, it's because terrain varies, and with respect to what?
To the weather.
I didn't hear you,
Weather.
Joe. What?
To the weather.
To the weather, right? So the weather and the terrain interact differently, right? And we're mostly talking about with wind and radiation when we're thinking about that, but because of that, we have a variable snowpack. And that's really an important lesson because this is a lot different than other avalanche courses. The level 1 course does not get people, and you've seen this over and over with the DMF, to hinge a decision about stability or terrain on a snowpack observation or a series of snowpack observations, right?